And that trend means basically the marketing guys will be actually going and hunting down these companies and effectively buying services from them rather than investing in their own IT organizations. So as IT people, you ought to be worried, right? And then the question obviously comes in is, how do we in IT stay relevant? Right? And how do we keep up with the sort of the rate of change, the examples that Mr. Ravi described, some of the stuff that was described around change in the previous session. How do we stay relevant with that, right? And there is, we've been doing a lot of work in Microsoft to sort of deal with the same challenges as well, right? And what we interestingly found out was not that it was rocket science, right? But we found out that these simple acronyms that you're probably hearing all day these days. How many of you know this? What does this mean? What is the acronym that stands for this?
Internet of Things.
No, there's an acronym which is basically called SMAC. Are you familiar with SMAC?
SMAC.
Social, mobile, analytics, and computing. SMAC, right? A lot of people actually call it scam also. It's the same thing, right? Because everything can be put as social, mobile, and suddenly it's like the new .com boom right now. And so what I'll do is, I won't share with you, any boring stories or anything else. I'll show you some simple data, some simple facts, and I'll actually show you some simple applications that are using these to become complete game changers. And my idea or my goal here is, to just stimulate that creativity back in you guys. And you can go and say, what, how can I start thinking of using these kinds of things in my own day jobs? And what is the benefit that can come out of it for me? So I'll start with mobile. If you looked at the session in the morning, if you looked at the top 25 trends out there, 5 of them are actually related to mobile. Right? Mobile, interestingly, if there was a recent survey done where Gartner asked the CIOs, what is the most disruptive technology that you want to have in this decade? 70% of them said mobile. So 70% of them said, we have a clear roadmap for mobile. We want to get disruptive with mobile. We want to have a real plan around mobile. And I want my sales guy to have all their data at their fingertips. I want my employees to have their data at their fingertips. I want to encourage work from home, and so on and so forth. Right? And it's not surprising that the mobile device market is exploding completely. Approximately 500 million devices are getting added on in the next 3 years approximately. 500 million devices. That's more than the total number of PCs and tablets combined in the marketplace today. Right? 500 million devices, incremental devices getting added on. And just think about it. We've had devices, PCs, mobiles, and so on for the last 20 years. Right? But we will add an incremental 500 million devices in just the next 2-3 years. So the market is exploding around that. What's happening in that context is, it's not just about the devices. It's also about the services that are being, offered by those devices or being consumed by those devices. And this is a very interesting statement and a very profound one, which is basically the value of a service is realized only when a device consumes it. Right? If you think about something like, say, Skype. Skype's on a lot of desktops right now. But if you think about it, the value of Skype is only it's only there because it is on a ubiquitous number of platforms, right? It'll be on an Android device, it'll be on a desktop, it'll be on a laptop, it'll be on an iPhone as well. And the vice versa is also true, right? That the value of the device also gets magnified by the services the device consumes, right? The phone in itself is nothing. But when I can actually, check email, go to Facebook, go play Angry Birds when I want to, and so on, suddenly the value of the device gets to be quite compelling. And we are fast moving to a world where, devices and services are the new future of IT. So today, in your IT organizations, if you're like me, you probably go log in and you have a payroll system and you log into some web and you go check your salaries. You go into a financial system and you enter some data. If you're a sales guy, you want some information, you go there. You want an HR information, you go somewhere else, and so on. Right? The expectation is in the next few years, everything will be on your handheld. Everything will be just an app. So you want any information, you go to the app hub for your company, and out there you start downloading it. Right? On my phone right now, I have the Microsoft, we call it a company portal, and there are already 20 apps published there. Right? And now we're thinking, in the next 2 years, there'll be 200 of them. because effectively everything within my organization is going on the device right now. So, and this is like, this is just an example to show that, there'll be consumer services, there'll be business services, they will work on various different form factors, but mobility is a trend that's here to stay. In fact, a recent survey said by next year, 1/3 of all data and all business intelligence will get consumed on handheld devices. And so think about it. If your companies are not moving towards mobile, you're missing out on a trend that's quite real and quite genuine. And I'll talk about sort of why this matters. Cloud. Yeah. Cloud's been just another one of these buzzwords. Everybody is talking about the cloud. Right? The cloud market, there are just scary estimates of how fast it's growing. Just the hybrid cloud market is supposed to be some $40 billion in the next 2 years. $40 billion, right? There's an interesting trend that the cloud's doing to IT though. There was a world where there was a very clear demarcation between your applications and your infrastructure. Your infrastructure was all the hardware, your applications were all the software, there was a good divide between them. Well, with the advent of the cloud, a couple of things happened. First, there was this whole services layer that came in. Second, we found that we had IT in the cloud and IT in the business. And what I mean by that is suddenly you had people who were able to get infrastructure, very, very cheaply. You could just rent out infrastructure at 12 cents an hour, right? And these are beefy machines that you can rent out at 12 cents an hour, right? Starting with Amazon and a bunch of other people who actually went into this market. And suddenly, there was no demarcation. I could suddenly put every single IT app that I wanted on the cloud, whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud. It could also be in the business directly. And that has started to squeeze how we look at IT in a very profound way. In the past, we actually made a lot of trade-offs between cost, efficiency, and business agility. Right? Cost was a big factor. So if you were, I remember I used to be in the US in those days, but when we used to have crickinfo.com, it used to be called Wisden or something at some point in time, right? I had to watch cricket matches, and guess what? The last 5 overs, I could never watch it because the traffic was so high, you could not get the refresh of the scores. And so you just waiting for that thing to reload itself. Those problems are problems of the past now. Because now all you do is just add more servers just for that duration of 5 minutes. You pay by cents for it, and you bring them down, right? So your cost is no longer the issue. Business agility, is dictated by just the rate at which you can sort of consume those services and consume the infrastructure that you have. And so it's no longer that the infrastructure is the bottleneck. What's really a bottleneck is the new set of skills to use this technology, right? So if you aren't familiar with the cloud, right, that's the call to action from here is go get familiar with how to build applications on the cloud, how to migrate your applications on the cloud. In fact, within Microsoft, within IT right now, I manage a portfolio of about 150 different applications. And we have a roadmap for every single application to get onto the cloud, right? And it doesn't matter. Some of them might be infrastructure as a service, which means I'll just take the application as it and host it on the cloud. Some of them will be rewritten to be a platform as a service play, written on top of the Azure infrastructure. And some of them will be actually even at the next level, which is complete software as a service. So understanding those parameters, because that's where the world is evolving, is getting to be super critical. And obviously, when you get things on the cloud, then you can get lots of stuff from it, right? IT can suddenly start getting offered as a service. It can be usage-based, it can be managed. There are very clear SLAs and SLOs that you can define, self-service and monitoring and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do once it's on the cloud. The third one, data. Data is one of these very interesting things. This is a lovely slide that you can find it on the web, and you can go and look at it. But it talks about sort of how much data is getting added every single minute. Right? And if you think about it, 48 hours of new videos on YouTube. You can look at. I didn't realize this one, but WordPress publishes 347 new blogs every minute. Right? You look at the number of sort of people on Google, 2 million searches every minute happening, or email send, or Facebook users sharing stuff, and so on. Data is just exploding, right? Constantly exploding. Now, an interesting side effect of data exploding also is the fact, only about 3% of the world's data today is actually tagged, which means there is a way to structure and discover that data. Only 3%. There's a lot of effort going on now to say not only will we see more data growth, right? This growth will only increase exponentially as more systems come online, more devices come online, and so on. There is also a very systematic effort in place right now to tag more of the world's data. So in fact, there are some estimates that say by 2020, we will have about 50% of all the data in the world getting tagged, because we'll start auto-tagging stuff, right? We will get better at we tag data. So we'll have explosion of data, we'll also have explosion in the way we tag data, and now suddenly you have so much data at your fingertips that our traditional systems will not be able to scale, right? And when we want to get insights out of that data, we will need to go from the evolutionary mechanisms to the revolutionary mechanisms. So traditional, analytics and so on can only scale so much. And suddenly you'll find that, if you have to deal with volume, variety, velocity of data, you have to think differently, you have to act differently, and big data is suddenly becoming a big buzzword, right? So this is the only part in, I think, Ravi's presentation that I didn't agree with, where he said big data is just a fad. I think big data is certainly here to stay. Here's some data around it, right? This was done by, I think it was Bain. Yeah, this is a Bain data which says, who's using big data and how much. And these are just by company verticals. If you look at the financial services, it's saying that by 2015, right, in a year's time, about $6.4 billion will be spent on big data, 2.8 on software, internet, and so on and so forth. Right? That's not the quite interesting one. The interesting one is the number below, which says, what is the cumulative growth of that spend going to be for the next 5 years? Right? Effectively, if you look at, a 40% cumulative spend of growth on communications and media, that means that will be probably like a $4 billion industry or $4 billion business in 2020. Right? And so big data is not just increasing in trend, it's accelerating, and it's across every segment of the population just because the kind of complexities we're dealing with today. I'll show you a couple of examples. And this one is very obvious because it just talks about the fact that the companies that, this is again some research that they've done, if you are using big data and analytics, you're more likely to be at the high performance end of the spectrum of all the companies evaluated. You're more likely to make decisions faster, you're more likely to make decisions as intended, and you're more likely to use the data as things change to be able to make the changing decisions. Right? So not very surprising, but honestly, so what does that say? If you guys haven't looked at big data, right, as a skill, go figure out what is this whole noise about Hadoop and Beehive and all these things about. And go figure out why and how people are getting so crazy about it, how you can apply it to the business. So we found some very drastic changes in scenario, and I'll talk about one or two of them when I go there. Here's first example. Bing is a competitor to Google, and we have the site called Bing Travel. And Bing Travel basically looks at every travel information that is possibly available. Right? And it used to be very simple, right? You basically said, I want to travel from A to B, give me the best routes, give me the best destinations, and so on and so forth. Well, now we started looking at a lot more data around it, not only to be able to say, how many people are buying, what is the seasonality, when do they buy, when do they travel, what is the expected cancellation, and so on, when do the airlines jack up their fares, for how many seats that are sold, and so on. And now you can get insights that say, not just the fact that you can fly from here to here and this is the fleet, it also tells you that with 80% confidence, in the next few minutes, this ticket is going to go up by $50. So you really want to buy it, you can buy it now. But that's not all. Right? There is now research happening that says, I will get up in the morning, and when I get up in the morning for a flight that might be actually, later in the afternoon, I will be told your flight is expected to be today 27 minutes late. And it'll do that by looking at all airline patterns, looking at traffic in the cities, looking at what demonstrations are happening in those cities, being able to analyze that, weather in the cities, whether there's sleet on the roads or not, if you're likely to miss your flight. Do you think that the planes will need defogging on those airports on those particular days and so on? Right? So just taking in gobs and gobs of information and then trying to process it and create value for you. And wouldn't this be a nice differentiator, right? If I'm in the car and running late, if this message popped up and said, trust me, The flight is going to be 27 minutes late, don't have to worry. That'd be fantastic. Right? Now, this is just one example. And think about in your industries, in your verticals, how you can actually use this concept of all the information available to you and what smart decisions you can make with that data that's available to you. Right? And the final one is social. Right? And again, we live in a very social world. My son, who's only 10 years old, doesn't know what it means to be not connected with people. Right? He has never seen a spreadsheet like this. Right? The only thing he's seen is a spreadsheet like this, which has a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed around it. Right? And you know what? In IT, we need to go start evolving to that. Right? I cannot send a presentation or a design or a software over to anybody and expect to get feedback when the customer actually sees it. 6 months later, or when they use it or run into a bug. There has to be telemetry built in, there has to be an element of social built in, so that everything that we do, we are able to converse with the end customer constantly. Right? So when we are building IT apps within Microsoft now, the social part is just built into it. Every app, you need to be able to just go click right and go, you know what, this module is not working as desired. Can somebody take a look? And somebody on the other end will quickly answer back, what do you mean by not working as desired? Let me help you understand it, let me navigate you through it. That is a reality, and that's the world we're living in. So social clearly is going to be mainstream. Right? Now, so social obviously helps you in multiple ways. It helps you, connect in colleagues with real time, gets you more engaged with customers, but more importantly, it gives you more insights into those customers. It tells you, hey, what are they doing? When are they using it? What are they struggling with? What do I need to improve? What do I need to fix? And so you really need that real-time feedback that comes out of social. So that's very briefly, about these 4 mega trends. If I give you an example of social, hiring. Hiring used to be, monster.com, right? Or Naukri.com or whatever it was. Then, LinkedIn came along and LinkedIn started hiring, and LinkedIn became sort of the de facto for hiring, and suddenly everybody was counted by how many connections do you have on LinkedIn right now. And that became sort of a value, and how many people you could reach in 1 degree of separation and so on and so forth. Well, guess what? What we're finding right now is there is an interesting study that is published that says, Facebook is now becoming fast the hub for hiring. And you're more likely to find better candidates using Facebook than you are through LinkedIn. And why that's not surprising? Because you think about it, in Facebook, you know everything about that person through a set of networks. You know where they go, what do they do, what do they like, how likely are they to be cultural fits, you know who they're connected to, so that if they're lying, all of those guys will get to hear about what they write down in their resume, and so suddenly that's becoming challenging. There's an interesting study done recently that says Twitter is now becoming fast the biggest source of hiring. So 72 characters that you can write now are becoming your job seekers are more likely to use Facebook over Twitter and LinkedIn. But now, we've seen a recent trend where Twitter is suddenly becoming, this non-intrusive way. Just post your resume, just post the offering, somebody takes a look at it, you engage in quick dialogues, and you're hired. So fundamentally, our industries are changing from what we've done in the past, thanks to social. Right? So I want to share with you a very interesting insight beyond this. Right? It's not that these 4 are what we call mega trends. Right? It's more than that. There is a unique dynamic at play, which is these 4 are completely interconnected together. Right? You cannot say, I'm going to go mobile, but I'm not going to go on the cloud, and I'm not going to be social. You can't say that I won't deal with data, but I want everything else. All of these are very tightly interconnected, and the power comes through when you actually bring them together and really transform something. Let me show you I'll show you 3 simple examples of what the power of SMAC or these mega trends can do. How many of you know what this device is? How many of you heard this company called Nest? Anybody? Okay. What happened with Nest? Why was it in the news recently? Who acquired them? Google acquired them. For how much? $3.2 billion. It's out there. Right? What does Nest do? Does anybody know what Nest does?
Home security systems.
Home security systems. Be specific. Thermostats. So can you imagine? And by the way, how long has this company been in existence?
6 months or
3 years. 6 months ago they got acquired. 3 years. 3 years, $3.2 billion. I won't even use the WhatsApp example, you've all read that one by the way. And but this one. But what do they make? They make home thermostats. Why would Google pay $3.2 billion for a company that makes thermostats? A thermostat device costs, by the way, $30. You can do the math on how much time will it take for them to recoup the money on those thermostats. There aren't enough households in the world, trust me, for them to be able to make that. But thanks to the fact that they not only make thermostats, they also have a back-end cloud infrastructure, a mobile front end, where you can, through your smartphone, say, hey, I'm going to be reaching home in 10 minutes, can you please raise the temperature? Then it goes to a server. From there, it checks in so that by the time you park your car, you get in, right? Especially on the East Coast where there's extreme temperatures in the US, you have your house warmed up and ready for you when you get in, right? But that's not obviously why somebody would pay $3.2 billion, right? If there is anything that is an invasion of privacy for an individual in a home, just almost like as bad as the Snowden case was for the US government, it's this. Because thanks to this device, now Google knows what time you wake up, what time you go to sleep, what temperature do you keep your house in, right? Do you sleep in 16 degrees? Do you sleep in 24 degrees? In what room in the house do you sleep? Right? What are your kids doing and when do they come in and so on and so forth? Because everything is connected, right? And now when they see that you like to sleep in 16 degrees weather, they can send a mailer tomorrow to you that says, here's the new comforter that's on sale. You might want to buy it, right? Or something else. So suddenly, thanks to this, and they also make these, so there are two devices that this company makes. One is this thermostat, the other one is fire alarms. Right? The fire alarms is basically got a sensor in it which is able to see what's in the house. Right? And so they know what your shopping patterns are, what groceries you just bought in, and so on and so forth. Right? And if need be, suddenly, with your permission, because they need your permission to be able to say, hey, in case I see something that is out of the ordinary, can I call up the fire department? And you just said yes to that, suddenly they have access to all that information. Right? And so that's what's worth $3.2 billion to a company like Google. But effectively, it's nothing but an example of how somebody's taken a very